this meeting last Tuesday, and all of us got a visit from Hurricane Sally. And our hearts and our thoughts are with all of you out there, because we know that some of you are in the midst of cleaning up and taking care of yourselves as well as others. And we do appreciate the fact that you are here or you are live streaming this meeting. The purpose of the meeting tonight is the approval of the millage rates and the adoption of the budget for 2021. At this time, I want to remind you that if you're here to speak at the public hearing on the budget, you will need to complete a form found on the table at the back of the room and bring it forward, and at the appropriate time we will call on you. Mr. Thomas, do you well, first I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Mr. Thomas, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Item 3 and 4 have been deleted from the agenda.
And do you want to explain why those were deleted?
Yeah, both of those are dependent upon state software being functioning so that we can put in our facility 5-year work plan. I don't know if it's available now. Is it available yet?
It was made available last Friday, but again, they didn't have enough time.
But not enough time, especially under the circumstances we've been under since Friday with no power connectivity. If we had all of that, we could not have gotten the work done from Friday to today. So we will delete this. It'll have to be re-advertised and brought back at a future board meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are we ready to vote on adopting the agenda? Please vote.
Approved, 5-0.
Right, the next item of business is a presentation of the 2020-2021 millage rates and district school budget.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
move the adoption.
Wait a minute. We have a presentation first.
Yes, Mr. St. Cyr, are you?
Oh, yes, sir. We'll go over a few slides. I think we'll have everything up there once you, I think item 5, if you go there, it'll give us a package. And Ms. McCants will hand out some other things for you. She's highlighted some slides instead of going through everything. She's giving you some
everything we have?
highlight. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And this is our final budget hearing. This fulfills the requirements of truth and millage set by the Department of Revenue. Ms. McCants will go ahead, if you would, and go through the 2020-21 proposed final budget.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to get it approved with what we've all gone through. Like Mr. St. Cyr says, this is the whole packet. The first 20-some pages is the district summary budget. After the 20-something pages, then we get to the supplemental. And that's where I've pulled out some of the slides from the supplemental information that I will be going through. Yeah. Goes to 21, the DSB, and then it goes to supplemental.
And before we get started, how long has this been available for the public to comment? Since our July meeting?
This is the final.
And
The tentative was linked since the July meeting.
Okay, just
This
wanted
is the
to
final.
let people know that it's been out there for people to comment.
Okay, page 1. Here I'm going to go over the different funds and the estimated revenues that we expect for the different funds. We have general fund, $367.6 million. Food service, $29.2 million. Federal programs, $41.8 million. We have new funds this year due to the CARES Act. We have the ESSER fund that we are budgeting this year, $5.1 million. That is not the total. We received a total of $12 million for the district. And the other other CARES Act, which is the governor's portion that they allocated to the district, which is a combination of different allocations. We are budgeting 1.5 million. We receive a summer recovery program portion. We also received a portion not long ago for like 477,000 for sanitation and cleaning. The summer recovery was 1.4 million. We also, in this fund, put George Stone portion, and we continue to get little pots of money from the governor due to CARES Act.
Teresa, before you move on, back up to the the 5.179 million. That's just a portion, like she said. That grant runs through 2022. September 2022. So we're anticipating most of that, may be used in the 2022 fiscal year. What state budget cuts, it looks like, are going to be severe. So that would be appropriate to use and to try to maintain the district's financial condition as allowed by the grant.
Thank you.
Okay, debt services funds, 66.7 million. Capital project funds, 178.1 million, a total of 690.4 million. We also have internal service funds, which are employee benefit trust and risk management funds of 64.3 million. That brings us to a grand total of $754,758,059.01. Page 2. Page 2 gives you a comparison of what we adopted in 1920 compared to what we're proposing for 2021. Also, it shows either increase or decrease in the budgets by fund. We expect a 2 million increase in general fund. That is basically due to district tax revenue because, of course, we have an increase in the tax roll, so we should be receiving more revenue from property taxes. If you go down, I just want to point out to you these large increases in debt service and capital projects funds. That is due to the bond proceeds, the $44 million that we will be receiving to build the new school. Any questions?
Any questions, board? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay. Page 3 gives you a breakdown of general fund revenue. Federal and federal through state, 3.3 million. State revenues, 209.9 million, which is the largest percentage of general fund revenues. And the majority of that state revenues made up of our FEFP, which is around 161 million. Property taxes, 95.6 million. We have other local revenues, 4.5 million, a total of 313.5 million. We have transfers in of 8.3 million. That is for our maintenance transfers, as well as transfers in from capital to cover insurance. Our beginning fund balance is 45.8 million. Again, for the general fund, $367,681,980.52.
Any questions? Seeing none, move on.
Okay, page 4.
Could Madam
Mr. Fetzko?
Just for clarification purposes, I remember at one point, people talked that the school district's budget was $660 million. And similar to that, this general fund of 367 million is the money that we actually control the spending. So when you had the total of 754 million,
Right.
the other from that, the 3 million and whatever, 300 and some million, is categorical and can't be used for things that would be at our discretion, things for salaries, et cetera.
This 367 is a portion of the 754, but the other portion is from other funds.
Right, but those other funds are more or less categorical and can't be used for general operating in any sense. They are tied to certain categories and have to stay in those categories.
Well, the categoricals really refer to general fund projects.
Mr. Fetzko, what she's talking about is the balance of that 700 and something million is federal,
Right.
debt service, capital outlay. So all those other funds that we deal with, aside from the general fund, is where the balance of that is. What you're talking about is categoricals within the general fund typically. Now, I'll say this before you say it. Capital, correct, cannot be spent for general operations, debt service, nor federal. They all have restrictions on them.
Right.
So that may be where you're heading.
That's the point that I wanted to make, that the ability for us to use an entire 700 and some million is not accurate.
Correct.
Okay,
For general operations.
right.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Page 4 gives a breakdown of the beginning fund balance. As you can see, we have an increase in the 2021 fiscal year compared to 1920. And you see that the largest part of that is in local carryovers. As far as, no, I meant to say that the largest percent of carryovers is local carryovers. And the majority of that is from school budgets. Whenever we give school budgets, we do not take it away, it just rolls forward. But the largest increases in categoricals, such as instructional materials, and which I thought, Mr. Fesco, you were pertaining to this. Categoricals are things that had to be spent on certain purposes, and we cannot use them for any other purpose. Okay. Next page, which on the slide would be on page 6. Next one, please. This is a general fund broke down by object. As you can see from the graph, salaries is 62.4%, benefits 18.9%. Those together shows that salaries and benefits is 81% of the total general fund budget.
Any questions?
Okay. The next slide, which on the overhead will be page 16, please. I'm going to go through the village levies. Okay, this gives a comparison of 1920 and 2021. Required local effort for 2021 is 3.829, which is a decrease of 0.115 from 1920. Discretionary operating 0.748, which is the same as 1920, as well as capital outlay 1.351, which is the same as 1920. The total for 2021 is 5.928 mills compared to 6.043, which is a decrease from prior year. But if we look at certified tax roll at the bottom, it is a $1.3 billion increase in the tax roll.
Madam Chair, and I think the decrease is showing the required local efforts, what our legislators did with their tax cut, right? Down here at the bottom.
Right, the 0.115.
That's what the legislators did, because we don't control
Correct.
required local effort.
Right, correct.
Okay. Just want to make that everybody's understanding. And that's where the teacher's pay would be used with the required local effort. That's where any increases in teacher salaries come from that, unless it's a categorical.
All of that's
That's
general.
general fund.
General fund.
At the
General
top is general fund.
Which all can be used for salary.
4.577. However, all of that works together through the FEFP. So state revenue and local revenue makes up the FEFP. The local revenue portion is those two categories, required local effort and discretionary. What the district does not make up in the per pupil funding set by Department of Revenue, Department of Education, the state's on the hook for.
Right.
So it's kind of an inverse relationship. So the more the required local effort generates of the per pupil funding, the less the state. So that it just works that way depending on the richness of the district in terms of property values.
I just want to make sure anybody that saw that tax cut, it wasn't this board, it was state legislators.
Well, I also want to make clear that the money that we receive from the state for general fund is a lot larger than what you're seeing on millage rate. That's just a portion. As you saw in an earlier chart, 67% of our general fund dollars come from the state of Florida. That's combination sales tax, other sources of revenue the state has that they combine to fund us through the FEFP. But yes, they every year they go through a calculation on required local effort for property tax. They're slightly adjusted downward this year.
Anyone else have a comment? Ready to move on?
Okay. Okay, the last page in the handout, which will be the next page. I want to go over just to show everyone this. I know it looks, if you could turn it, please. Just to show property owners that we are not, I know we advertise a tax increase, but we are not levying any more millage. The rate is a decrease and not an increase to property owners. The only reason is a tax increase because the millage is higher than the rollback rate from the prior year. So if you look at this example, you'll see if someone with their property value is the same as the prior year, they will actually be paying less to the district.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
And the
Mr.
reason why
Adams.
they included a rollback rate is for property value increases. Ensure our citizens did not get an impact from the increase in taxes due to their property values rising. So I just want to clarify that. That's the purpose of a rollback rate.
It is, but as I said earlier, and I'll say it again tonight, and I think it's more substantial tonight than it was when I said it a month ago. When you look at what we're dealing with hurricane recovery, our capital needs are greater now than they've ever been. And if we weren't convinced that this isn't the right thing to do for our citizens, we're not gonna increase their millage rate, which is what the individual homeowner cares about. But we need that money this year because many of the damage assessments that we're seeing on schools, they're not going to be an insurance item. We're going to have to go to FEMA. FEMA's only going to cover 75%, if we're lucky. We're going to cover millions of dollars in cost. It's going to come out of this capital fund. So what you're proposing to do tonight will be helpful. We didn't anticipate a hurricane, but it's going to be an important asset and resource for the district as you move forward.
Any other questions? Those are the only slides that I pull out of the full booklet, but if you have any questions about any other pages, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
And this is available on the finance website, correct? If people want
Also
to
on the
look at
front,
it.
on the front page, once you adopt this budget, it will go on the front page of the district website.
Okay.
Just under where the tentative is now, we go with the final.
You know, some of us were talking about, we wanted to increase the capital because of, you know, and we listened to Mr. Adams, and because of the storm, you know, I realized that. But again, to your point, you know, we have capital needs, and the storm has only exacerbated that. So I don't want to put any more on the citizens, but I do believe we have to keep it where we have advertised it in order to be able to be as effective as we possibly can in this climate. Any other comments, board members? Thank you, Ms. McCants.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Mr. St. Cyr?
No, ma'am, you can see, I think we handed out another spreadsheet that shows the difference moving from tentative to final. That's just FYI for you.
This
So,
one,
yes, ma'am. By fund and then also detailed general fund.
okay. Mr. Adams?
I'll go ahead and get my comment out before we start voting on this, because I won't be voting for the capital millage increase tonight. I saw this article last year from the superintendent defending why we didn't do it last year and how much was going to be in there. And he mentioned about the half-cent sales tax, and I think the people of Escambia County has been very generous to this county. He quotes in here in his article that Jim Little, Escambia County School District Superintendent, defends property tax cut, okay? $25 million we get from half-cent sales tax. So I think we better be very cautious in the future, because we could lose the generosity of the people. Not only did they get hit by the COVID crisis, now they got hit by Sally. And I mean, I've got money coming out of my pocket this week, and I know a lot of people in Escambia County does. So for that reason, the rest of the budget I'm fine with, but I think this was just the wrong time to do a property tax increase.
If I could
Thomas?
comment on that, I would like to remind everyone that this board had the discretion to levy up to 1.5. We did not do that. If you'll look at the capital millage that the board will be voting on tonight, it is identical to what you passed last year. That's what we did. We didn't raise it, we didn't lower it. That millage rate from capital, it's the same. Now, is it going to generate additional dollars for the district? It is. And you know where that new money comes from? New construction. People that haven't been on the tax roll that should pay their fair share to help us with all the needs they're creating in our schools. Yes, I have always defended the tax decrease and cut where we can. I did not believe a couple of months ago this was the year where we could afford to take that hit, and I believe it more so now than ever before, because you will have millions of costs that will be capital in nature. And so we're not hurting the citizens. The millage for capital is identical to what you did last year. So if I'm looking at my tax bill, I'm going to see that my millage, it's the same from the school board. It's going to be a little decrease because of the state required local effort. The end result is the school district will have another million or so that we'll have at our discretion to spend on capital needs, and that will evaporate very quickly this year.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any other comments? So at this point, we are ready for a public hearing. Is there anyone here? I do not have any forms to speak at the public hearing before we take action on the millage rates and the budget. Seeing no one rushing forward. Okay, at this, so we're ready to move on to the adoption of our resolutions. And they're, I think, they're on they're on the screen, and then some of us got, and we have to do each of these separately, and so bear with us as we go through this process. So anyone wishing to make a motion on resolution number 2021-03?
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2021 required local effort millage rate at 3.829 mils.
One,
No.
we're not quite there yet. When I get there, I'm calling on you, Mr. Fetzko.
I'm not doing it next time.
We're all tired. I mean, all of us in the community are tired. So right now, we're on adoption of the resolutions, which is item number 6, and number 161 on adoption of the resolutions.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of resolution number 2021-03, resolution determining revenues and millage levied.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second? I'll second it. Okay. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Approve 4-1.
Madam Chairman, I move the adoption of resolution number 2021-04, resolution adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 4-1.
Next item of business, the final adoption of the millage rates for fiscal year 2020, 2021. We have to do each of these by separate motion.
Well, since I've practiced twice already, I should be able to do it without the paper. Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 required local effort millage rate at 3.829 mils.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Dr. Eller?
Dr. Edler? There you go.
Approve 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 discretionary operating millage rate at 0.748.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 5-0.
I need a motion on the capital outlay.
Madam Chairman, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 local capital improvement, capital only, at a millage rate of 1.351.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second? I will second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 4-1.
Madam Chairman, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 total millage rate at 5.928 mils.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 4-1.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item of business, the final adoption of the district school budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 general fund budget in the amount of $367,681,980.52.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Mr. Adams, is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 5-0.
Madam Chairman, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 special revenue food services budget in the amount of $29,219,752.60.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 5-0.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 special revenue federal programs, $41,866,420.13.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Any discussion? Please vote.
Approve 5-0.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 Special Revenue CARES Act ESSER budget in the amount of $5,179,741.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Could somebody say what ESSER stands for?
Yeah, it's education, elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund.
Thank you. Just because not everybody understands the letters. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approve 5-0.
Madam Chairman, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 Special Revenue CARES Act other budget in the amount of $17.94.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved, 5-0.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2021 debt service funds in the amount of $66,759,290.17.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved, 5-0.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 capital project funds in the amount of $178,140,191.05.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved, 4-1.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 internal service funds budget in the amount of $64,329,665.60.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved, 5-0.
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the 2020-2021 total budget in the amount of $754,758,059.01.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved, 4-1.
Okay, so we have finished the business of this meeting. Is there anyone here to speak to public forum at this meeting? Seeing none, if there's no objection, we are adjourning this meeting